Talks podcast with Benjamin.
And Cassidy, and today we're talking about cooking.
What exactly about cooking?
Well, everything about cooking. Like, how did you get into cooking?
Wow, I don't know. I think it's kind of strange for me, particularly because cooking has never really been something that was a plethora in my house, right?
Yeah,
Growing up, it was almost always, hey, we're gonna pick up this. Hey, we're gonna go out here. Hey, we're gonna microwave this frozen whatever,
yeah,
right? Very rarely did we ever have home cooked meals, and the extent of home cooking for my household when I was little was peanut butter and jelly sandwiches, grilled cheese sandwiches,
Oh, moving up in the world.
and occasionally pancakes. Everything else came out of a box, was frozen, or was picked up from a drive-through.
Yeah,
Right. Now, granted, my parents were fairly busy, but I know plenty of people with busy parents and busy family that still find time to cook. So I don't know. I guess it's because of the lack of that got me interested,
yeah,
and the fact that my parents were always watching things like the Cooking Channel and HGTV and all that.
yeah.
So I thought, wow, well, that looks pretty cool, and I'd like to know how to do some of that stuff.
Hmm.
So I guess that's kind of what piqued my interest in cooking was just the fact that my family never cooked
Yeah,
realistically, and I was exposed to like your TV chefs,
yeah,
Bobby Flay, Guy Fieri, the Flavor Town man himself. Just those kind of personas also got me interested in it.
yeah.
What
Um,
about you?
well, my family cooked all the time. Like, every time you come over, my mom cooks enough to feed an army,
Right.
and which is something my grandmother did while she was still here. Is she would just feed everyone. That's just we just say we're Lockmans. We feed people. And like every I know when people come to my house, I'm like, okay, so what kind of food do you want? What can I make? And so that's always kind of been a thing for my family. But growing up, I mostly just knew how to do simple things. Like I could do grilled cheese, quesadilla, omelets, simple things that a kid can do. And then when I moved out on my own, I started honing in my kitchen skills and looking up and trying different things.
That's funny that you mentioned that because now that I'm thinking about it, it was kind of taboo for me to cook at the house. So I couldn't do anything as
Yeah.
far as basic cooking goes, whether it be just basic knife skills, basic boiling skills. Talk about fun. I couldn't figure out how to boil at one point.
Wait, what?
So my small kid brain recognized that you have to get the water to a certain temperature to boil.
Yeah.
However, my small kid brain did not recognize that if you fill up a large pot with a lot of water and then set it to the exact temperature which it boils, it
Yeah.
takes forever for that
Yep.
water to boil.
Yeah.
So the basic things like that were just unknown to me, right? And again, it goes back to I guess it was taboo because anytime I asked to cook or wanted to try cooking or whatnot, it was more or less frowned upon, and the only thing I really got to do was help make cookies. But again, that came out of a box of like Betty Crocker mix, and all we
Yeah.
did was put it all in a bowl and then put little dollops on a baking sheet and throw it in the oven. So I don't know. Again, I really don't know. I guess it's the TV personalities that really got me into it.
Yeah. I think it was more of family stuff for me because every Christmas we'd all go to one person's house and we do little Christmas goodies where we make almost everything from scratch.
Hmm.
And so each person like we all got to help out with like a couple of different things. Like as soon as the wedding cookies were done baking, you immediately had to roll them in the powdered sugar. You usually make the older people do that because the little kids will burn their hands.
Hmm.
Because I almost burned my hand once. But yeah, cooking was always kind of in my family.
Well, that's nice.
Yeah.
So I guess that leads to the next point, right? So we found our interest at some point down the road,
Yeah.
but we had to become somewhat competent at it. So how'd
Yeah.
you develop your skills?
A lot of trial and error. Um, I used to think that I cooked like Meliodas from Seven Deadly Sins, where it looked delicious but tasted horrible.
Okay.
Um, just because I was kind of going off what I had seen as a kid, and I was like, oh dang, I guess I didn't see everything, and I didn't. And so I started asking people how they made certain things, as well as looking up recipes on my own and trying them out. and I just kind of slowly honed in my skills.
Right.
Yeah.
Mine's a little, I would say funny,
Yeah,
at
it
least to
is.
me. So the first time I can remember trying to cook something for myself, I tried to make queso.
Okay.
Okay, so ironically enough, making queso is not all that hard.
Did you microwave cheese?
No, I took it a step further.
Oh, okay.
I put cheese in a frying pan
Oh God.
and added milk and just stirred it.
No, no. Wait, isn't it doing that? I might be thinking of the wrong thing, but I've seen some people do. It's like equal parts butter and flour, then slowly stream in milk, and then add cheese, and it makes like a cheese sauce. I don't
Y-
know if that's queso, but I know that's a cheese
Yeah,
sauce.
you can make cheese sauce that way, but one of the you know how you make chocolate, like melted chocolate?
Yeah.
Same concept for melted cheese.
Uh, yeah.
So you want to kind of do that, and you want to mix in your peppers and whatnot, like you finely
Yeah.
chop. And that's how you make a good queso, is because you're not making the cheese any different. You're keeping it the same consistency, the same
Yeah.
thickness of melted cheese, but you're having to do it like the same way you would do melted chocolate.
Okay.
Right. So that was the first time I can remember actually trying to cook. The second time I remember trying to cook, I I'll go ahead and say I'm obsessed with Japanese cooking,
Yeah,
like
same.
traditional Japanese cooking. Going back to small kid brain though, I thought Japanese cooking consisted of fried rice and whatever else that the
Chicken.
yeah like fried rice and chicken pretty much. So I was like, oh cool, and then I was like, oh wait, they have some kind of soup. So I was like, Japanese soup on Google, and I found this recipe. I didn't follow it the way I should have, hence why
Mm.
it turned out so bad. But it was interesting. It took me roughly 2.5 hours to do this soup and this rice. It was bad. I mean, it was bad, and it turned out awful.
Oh my gosh.
Then it gets a little worse, or better maybe. I don't know. So as I continue learning how to cook, at this point, I doubt it was learning. It was just more so me throwing stuff in a pot and hoping it would work.
I was like making potions with all the shampoos.
Yeah, pretty
Yeah,
much.
okay.
Uh, I made chicken one time, and I always remember hearing how scary chicken would be, right? Because if you don't cook it enough, you'll get salmonella. And I was like, oh,
Yeah.
you'll die. And I was like, oh, I don't want to die. Yeah,
You
little kid me.
overcooked it.
So I let this chicken cook in this pan.
Hmm.
It didn't burn, but it was the driest piece of chicken I have ever eaten in my life. And I threw so many different sauces on it.
Trying to rehydrate it.
It tasted awful. It was dry. It had conflicting flavors, sauces, and different aromatics were all over the
Oh
place.
gosh.
I mean, I used ginger sauce. I used teriyaki sauce. I used Worcestershire at one
What?
point.
What did you use Worcestershire?
I don't know. Again, this is before I knew anything about cooking, right?
Okay.
Again, you understand my basis for cooking was almost non-existent at this point, right?
Yeah.
So I'm literally just trying different things, trial and error to the max,
Yeah.
and I'm figuring it out slowly and slowly. And then come about probably 4 or 5 years ago now, that's when I would say my cooking became novice level
Yeah.
to the point where I could do basic knife skills, basic cooking, basic preparations, and then over the past year or two, it's gotten a lot more honed in where I can do much finer things like dicing an onion very quickly, or julienning a pepper, or
Yeah.
and then the other aspect of cooking is plating, but that's a little more advanced, I would say.
Yeah. I mean, my plate, I only make my plating pretty if like I'm cooking for someone. If it's for me, I just slop it in a bowl. I don't care.
Yeah. Meanwhile, plating is like one of my
That's what your favorite things to do.
Yeah, so it's like it's amazing for me to look back. If I go back 10 years, I'm making crappy cheese in a pan by throwing milk and heating it,
Hmm.
and now I'm able to make.
Did you
Uh,
heat it on high?
I don't remember.
I think you heated it up. You probably
I
did.
don't remember.
Knowing kid brain, if I put this on high, it'll cook faster.
I don't know. Kid brain me remember. exact temperature for a big thing of water, so I
Yeah,
wouldn't put too much hope on that one.
I was a cook things on high kid.
Yeah, I bet you were.
Yeah, well.
Well, yeah, it's funny for me to look back and think, oh man, I couldn't even do basic things now, and then now I can do like purees, foams, and other things.
Yeah.
So yeah, you're right though. It just comes down to, at least for me, it came off as trial and error, and then once I figured out the basics,
Hmm.
just honing it,
Yeah.
right? Just learning the little extra details that you might be missing. That makes that much more efficient.
Yeah, I do that with when I look up recipes, like I was like, okay, I have some brown bananas. What do I do?
Mhm.
So I found this banana muffin recipe. And on its own, yeah, it's great, but I've slowly like changed it. Like I added a couple different spices. I don't use that much sugar. I actually switched to instead of 3/4 cup of white sugar, I use a few tablespoons of brown sugar,
All
and
right.
it's just as sweet.
Yeah, it's there's a lot of compromises you can do, especially if you're doing more healthier variations.
Yeah.
A lot of things you can find compromises on. One thing I will say though, you got to treat your equipment right in the kitchen.
Yes. Oh
If
my
you don't have
goodness.
good knives, it'll be the bane of your existence.
Oh
There's
yeah.
nothing more dangerous than a dull knife trying to cut something
Yeah.
because you're forcing it. You're bound to get cut. The
Yeah.
cuts will be sloppy. The food will look awful. I mean, it's not worth it. Sharpen your knives, keep them clean. With your saucepans, whether it be your frying pan or a small pan for your sauces or larger pans like woks, keep them clean. Make
Mm.
sure you're not scraping them with metal objects. Make sure you're not burning stuff onto them. And if you do accidentally burn something, which it happens,
Get it
just
off immediately.
just clean it off.
Yeah.
You got to keep your equipment up. If you don't, it'll make cooking worse. And as you continue to use the same cooking utensil and it's not being taken care of, your quality of food will slowly degrade. And you'll eventually get to a point where you'll recognize, and like, all right, well, that doesn't look right. Or, man, this is heating unevenly now. Or,
Yeah.
like, for instance, there's a pan that I used the other day that really needs to be thrown out. My parents have used it since I was a kid.
Yeah.
And, Lord, that's 20 odd years now, minimum, 20 plus years minimum. That pan has seen some better days, right? It's heating unevenly. What was it? I was reducing some shallots with some peppers, and half the shallots were slightly browning,
Yeah. The rest of them are raw.
and no, not necessarily raw. The
Oh.
other half was overcooking.
Oh.
Yeah, so I had to keep rotating them in and out into this one specific hot spot on the pan
Mm-hmm.
because of how uneven and how dirty that pan has gotten over the years with different buildups because they don't keep the pan up to adequate standard.
Yeah. That's something that I really had an issue with because I moved into the family lake house to commute from school, and we got that lake house from an older couple who they just decided that we don't really use it anymore, so we bought it. And because they didn't need all the stuff, we ended up getting a lot of the well, basically everything that was already in the house. And we haven't replaced any of the things, and it's frustrating because I've been able to salvage a few different knives that I'm very protective of. And but that's about it. A lot of the pots and pans are pretty yeah, they've seen much better days, and I've gotten to where I almost exclusively cook with a single fry pan, a pot, and my wok.
Well, I mean, realistically,
Yeah.
there's only about five different things you need in the kitchen
Yeah.
as far as cooking pans or pots go. You need a big pot, you need a frying pan of some sort, you need a saucepan is debatable, but if you're looking to make things and
Yeah.
you need something that's smaller to work with, saucepans are good. Uh, and then realistically from that, maybe a what are those things called? Griddle burners or I'm trying to think what they're called. The ones that let you grill on a stove.
I don't know the name of that because a griddle is like
Yeah.
yeah. I don't remember, but it lets you have like the grill marks. I know what you're
Mhm.
talking about.
Yeah, I would say those four things are important, and then of course, two knives, a chef's knife and then a paring knife. I think those two things will
Yeah.
take you just about anywhere
Yeah.
as far as cooking goes. Now, of course, you can have much more expansive collections, which will cover a lot more basis, but
Yeah.
as for a good starter, those are really the things I would say you need.
I mean, and that's what I have, but Sometimes if you want to make something a little fancy, you're like, this is going to be difficult.
Yeah, I mean, absolutely. When you have that limited of a supply, it does make things a little bit more difficult, but it's not impossible.
Yeah.
It's just a whole lot harder if you don't have the proper tools.
Yeah.
So you mentioned recipes, like well, for your banana, like the banana nut muffins, right? With the
Yeah.
brown
Well,
bananas.
it said just banana muffins, but depending on what I have in the kitchen, I'll sometimes add either walnuts or blueberries and make them. You can just kind of add something to them. So I after I've tried a recipe a couple of times, it becomes more of a guideline, and I start to experiment a little bit more.
Right, and I think that's a good idea. You had mentioned at one point though, brown bananas. Oh, what's a recipe that I can use these for?
Yeah,
There's a website. I can't remember its exact name, but I think it's called "What Can I Make With This?" dot
yeah,
com, and it pulls up this list that you can enter in the ingredients that you have on hand, all sorts of spices. Let's say you have your basic spices, so salt and pepper, and then you have things like brown bananas, butter, a little bit of milk, and some other
yeah,
things, and it'll say, "Hey, these are all the things you can make with just the ingredients you have." If you get these ingredients, you can make these things as well. Also, if you get even more ingredients, you can even make the rest of these. It's a really good website for people who really don't have any idea what they're thinking about making
yeah,
or don't know what to make or what they can make with what they have.
yeah. And first, I just remembered my little fiasco yesterday. Um, I've made these muffins 100 times at least,
Right.
and somehow, and it requires a third cup of melted butter or oil. And I was like, I have stick butter, I might as well use it. And somehow I made that butter explode in the microwave. I've cleaned it multiple times. Everything I microwave now is just going to be butter infused. So let it be known, even if you do something 1,000 times, you're still going to make mistakes.
Absolutely.
Still don't know how I did it.
That's the one thing I can safely say. Like, there are some dishes I've made several times, and I can still find a way to mess them up.
Oh yeah,
And it might just be devil's in the details sort of thing,
yeah,
but there's always something that I'm messing up ever so slightly. Like, one of my favorite things to make is a filet mignon steak.
yeah,
I can get a perfect medium rare filet mignon steak that's buttery, melt in your mouth deliciousness.
yeah.
You've had it,
Yes.
all right? I can still mess it up, even though I've cooked it enough times to where I've gotten it to the point where it's practically perfect.
Hmm.
I still can find ways to mess it up.
Like that chickpea curry I made
Hmm.
that one day. I one time used a different brand of coconut milk, and the texture was wrong. Like instead of being like homogeneous and creamy all throughout, there were just like little clumps of coconut milk, and I was like, dang, probably should have just went and bought the more expensive one.
Yeah, it's amazing what little variations and just even the most basic of ingredients can
Yeah,
have on your overall product.
yeah.
Freshness is key.
Oh yes, using fresher ingredients always tastes better. Like if you have a few extra dollars, buy the fresh herbs. It'll take your food to the next level.
Right. And I also even argue that if you're cooking a lot, the fresh herbs are actually more bang for your buck because you're getting a lot more of them
Yeah,
that are fresh, ready to go for a fairly decent price. Now, granted, if you go and buy the bottle spices where it's like a bunch of it already bottled up and it's probably $3 or $4, upwards to
yeah,
10, depending on what kind of spice it is,
yeah,
you're not going to beat that value. But it's not fresh. It's no telling how old. It's probably been processed a few times. And
yeah,
now, granted, you want to use those things occasionally, but generally, fresh herbs and spices are more or less the way to go.
yeah. Let's see. What are some? Oh, I know you mentioned filet mignon. What's another recipe that you would say is a go-to?
Oh, a go-to recipe. Oh, Lord. That's interesting. Go-to recipes right now. I really don't have anything that's just, yes, I'm gonna make this if I'm in a hurry or whatever.
Yeah,
I'm always trying something new. Recently, one of my go-tos was smoked salmon with steamed broccoli and rice. A
yeah,
very quick, very simple dish. It takes about 10 minutes to do if you have a steamer or a rice cooker or whatever you want to call it. It takes about 10 minutes to do. It does all the work.
Mhm.
Even if you don't have one of those, if you have a steaming basket, still takes about 10 minutes, just takes a little bit more longer to set up. If you don't have that at all and you have a pot and that's how you steam your rice, you'd have to steam your rice that way, and then you'd have to either separately steam your broccoli or just oven bake it or roast it or
Yeah.
whatever you want to call it. That was something I've been using a little bit. As far as a go-to that I used to do, um, off the top of my head, I can't really think of anything as far as go-to recipes. Like I said,
Like
there's
poor man's pizza?
again, that's something more recent, right?
Yeah.
And poor man's pizza is just a healthier alternative to pizza, which my family eats a lot of,
Yeah.
right? So I'd rather eat something that I enjoy with the toppings that I want that I know is much healthier,
Yeah.
right? My entire poor man's pizza is 500 calories, right? And I get 6 slices out of it.
Hmm.
So, I mean, something like that is, I would say, fairly go to as of right now. But I don't know. Come back to me. I'll
Okay.
definitely.
Um,
What about yourself? You have any go tos?
a lot of my go-tos are meatless because they became go-tos when I was still a vegetarian. Let's see, I've got chickpea gyros, where you roast some chickpeas, you even make your own
Mm-hmm.
tzatziki sauce. Serve it in a pita bread, really good.
Right.
Very easy to do. There's the chickpea curry that I mentioned
Right.
earlier. It's delicious, loaded with different kinds of veggies, and you know exactly what's going on in there. Not every now and then I'll get cumin seeds instead of just using cumin, and that amplifies the flavor. I make a lot of pad thai, love pad thai,
Right.
as well as my the beef basil bowls that I've made.
Mm-hmm.
I've got my mom hooked on those. She loves them. Every now when she was just like, what do you want to do for dinner? And I was like, do you want the beef basil bowl? She's like, yeah.
That's good.
Yeah. And I even tried a different way of cooking the beef last time I made them, and
Right.
it was so much better, even though I kept getting like little burns all over my hands. Worth it, in my opinion.
Right. Taking that little extra step to add that little bit
Yeah.
extra flavor.
I forgot to cook the rice while I was doing it, so we ate dinner kind of late, but
Yeah,
it was worth it.
it was okay. Oh, one of my go-tos tacos. I hand make the masa tortillas,
Yeah.
and I usually do some kind of marinated pork with the
That you always spill on your white shorts.
yes,
Yeah.
uh, and then I also do the drunken veg with it,
Yeah.
with the onions, peppers. I want to say I throw something else in there. It, no, it's two types of peppers and onions,
Yeah.
and slaw, no, purple cabbage.
Yeah. Purple cabbage.
That's what it was. Yeah, so that one I liked a lot. That one's a good go-to, pretty quick, simple. The only thing that takes time on that is making the tortillas
Yeah.
and just pressing them out. That's really the only thing that takes time.
Hmm.
Um, Another go-to I recently started doing was the bread, the artisan bread.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, every time I make it, it gets eaten very quickly.
Well, it's artisan bread.
Yeah, I love it. It looks nice, it tastes amazing. It's got that nice rustic shell on the
It
outside,
does.
good crunch, good flavor in the center. That one's a really good one. If you were to ask me this about a year ago, uh, the not Neapolitan, what are they called? The pizza, the
Margarita pizza.
yeah, margarita pizza. I would do it's a type of the Neapolitan variation.
Yeah.
I would do a Neapolitan margarita from scratch,
Yeah.
and that's one thing I got to talk about. Scratch. I love making everything from scratch.
Yeah.
There's just this extra bit of satisfaction you get.
Hmm.
And if I had to guess one more, just go to that I can do pretty quickly without having to think about it, probably risotto. That's probably one of my other go-tos.
Yeah.
It just it's not risotto is difficult in the sense that it takes time.
Yeah.
Risotto in itself is a very simple dish to do. It's just, are you willing to wait the time it takes to make it as good as you can get it, right? A lot of people want to rush risotto and it ruins it overall.
Hmm.
But if you take your time with it and you let it sit for that full 30 minutes to slowly infuse,
Yeah.
you can make something really delicious and creamy.
Hmm. I have successfully made my own risotto once, but my stove malfunctioned because it's a very old stove.
Hmm.
I think maybe something slid and got undone. Everything else that I cooked Never got warm.
Yikes.
Yeah. The risotto was good though.
That's great. So, I guess one of the things that I get asked often is how do I find my recipes that I use, or
Yeah.
where do I get inspired to do some of the things that I do?
Yeah.
And it's really just go look,
Yeah.
right? For instance, I like the fancier side of things. I'll admit it. I like making things that are a little more elevated in complexity, difficulty,
Yeah.
flavor, because I want to, stretch my skills a little bit further. I want to see
Hmm.
what I can do and what I can't do. So I like to look at more complex things, and occasionally I'll get inspired and I'll say, oh, well, this is a type of dish where it takes like a basic, let's say duck, right? Duck's a fairly common poultry, I would assume.
Is it?
I
I've
would,
only eaten duck once.
well, I mean, duck, yeah, maybe it's not common. I thought it was a little bit more common than it was, but maybe not.
It depends on where you are, I think.
I guess because I think up north they eat a duck a good bit more.
Maybe.
But anyway, I digress. So like for instance, you would use duck foie gras, right? It's a very simple thing to do, right? But you can elevate it to the next level by adding like certain purees with it, certain flavor compounds with it, letting it cook a certain way. Like when I did the Chinese pork belly,
Oh, yeah.
right? It's taking something that I like. I like pork belly, right? But what if I were to make it and push it to the next level, right? What if
Yeah.
what would happen if I took it and I said, all right, instead of doing it this basic way, what if I made it a little more complex,
Hmm.
right? And the reward is almost always beneficial.
It
Like the
is.
pork belly that because you ate it, that
Yeah.
it was delicious,
It was.
right? And it's just find what you like, right? It start off with something. For instance, if you want to have chicken breast, right? A lot of people like chicken breast. Say, okay, well, what can I do with chicken breast? And pull up recipes
Yeah.
and find something that suits your taste, your style.
Yeah. Like when I started like getting my go-to recipes, I went on Pinterest and I looked up cheap vegetarian meals.
Right.
And they are still cheap. They're very easy to do. That's why they're my go-tos.
That's good. One of my other go-tos that I've started doing recently is a Cuban mix. It's black beans, white rice, usually some kind of a light protein, so
Yeah.
whether it be fish, chicken. Um, Very rarely do I hit red meats when I do something lighter.
Yeah. I think I don't really do a lot of red meat.
Yeah, I used to eat a lot of red meat.
Yeah.
I still eat red meat, don't get me wrong. I love it. I love a good steak, love a, good piece of pork every now and then, but I'm eating a lot less of it.
Yeah.
And there was at one point, and this is why I started eating less red meat. I had eaten red meat every single day for 2 or 3 weeks at one point, and my kidneys were hurting.
Yeah. Red meat can really affect the kidneys.
Right, and it wasn't a severe pain, but it was enough of a pain for it to be noticed, and if I was noticing it, that's probably the start of something I shouldn't be doing.
Yeah.
Right. And I understand there's things like the carnivore diet where people swear by it and things like that. And maybe there's benefits and you have to get past that little hump in the hill, right?
Maybe.
But if my body's starting to get pain because of the result of something I'm doing, I usually
Yeah.
tend to stop.
Mm-hmm.
But I guess that kind of segues into something else when it comes to cooking is what are things you want to try?
Hmm.
Right. And I guess that's kind of broad, right?
Yeah.
So things you want to try can consist of just about anything, whether it be restaurants, food, styles, um, really anything.
Mm-hmm.
Do you have anything in particular, or
Um, well, the thing is, I also really love baking,
okay,
but as a person who lives alone, I don't need to make an entire cake. I don't want to be left alone with an entire cake.
right?
Not that I don't have self-control, but if it's pretty, it's a good cake, you know. Um, I would love to expand my baking horizons. I don't, maybe, uh, I mean, it was kind of hard to do this year. I don't think I did it at all. But for a while, I would bake every one of my family birthday cakes. And that just kind of became my thing to do. And I would always try a new recipe, and they usually turned out pretty good, even though somehow I always end up messing up my birthday cake. Everyone else, all of theirs turned out great, and then I tried to make myself just funfetti cupcakes. No, it wasn't cupcake. It was a regular funfetti cake, and it fell apart, and I had to panic and make cake balls.
That's okay.
uh,
A compromise, right? Or
I guess.
solutions to a problem.
I guess.
I guess for me, as far as wanting to try, I would really want to try my hand at some of the finer things. Like I'm starting to get up there. The I would classify as higher quality or higher class
Yeah.
dishes. Um, if I could, I would love to try my hand at like one of those 3 Michelin star kind of recipes where it not only looks nice, but it's just
Yeah.
amazing off the charts. Takes like 6 hours to make, sort of thing. I mean, it seems a little ridiculous to some people, but it's just one of those things to kind of flex my culinary skill to see if I could
Yeah.
actually pull it off.
Yeah. I just want to keep honing in my current skills. Like, I've been trying to get a lot better with my dicing.
Hmm.
Like you saw that onion the other day. It was small.
It was.
It was good small diced onion. So I just want to keep improving.
Right.
Like maybe even learn how to do like specialty coffee drinks and stuff like that because I have a Ninja coffee bar and I just make the same thing every day. So I want to I want to try some new stuff with that as well.
Right. Well, I don't know, but there's a lot of things I want to try. Ultimately,
Yeah.
in the end, there's just if I'm able to, I will. If not, yeah, so be it.
Yeah.
You know, I want to go experience some things. I want to try to make some things, but if I can, I can't. That's not a big a deal.
And I also have the resolution of not exploding butter in my microwave ever again.
Yeah, that might be a good idea.
I turned it around for 5 seconds and I heard this giant pop and there was butter everywhere.
Nice.
Yeah.
All right. Well, I think that's a good place to end it.
I think so too.
All right. Well, thank you everyone for tuning into the Dumb Bald Smart Talk podcast.
Thanks for hanging out with us.